Full story is 1989, my first real paid job was interviewing Tommy Lee from Motley Crue. So I was in the music industry for many years. Journalist, published some music magazines, helped launch a couple other magazines, started a label called Distort. We signed a couple artists called Alexis on Fire and City in Color. At the same time, I decided to do this digital agency thing in 2000 that sort of became this interesting life. So it's been fun. So I sort of got to straddle between the music industry and this digital marketing world. I wanted to come to this event in particular because I feel like there's this really strong connection between what's happening with brands today and I think what's happening with both bands and just businesses in the music industry. Basically what I do is I'll spend every year doing 40 to 60 events like this, B2B, B2C, small, medium, large audiences. And I can tell you that it's not just the music industry that's dealing with this big bad wolf called disruption. It's every business, it's every industry. So I know the music industry, especially when I come to events like this, likes to really harp on their own industry and how tough it is, but it's every industry that's going through this. Do you believe that? Think about everything, retail, accounting firms, law firms, they're all going through this. And so what's amazing about this is when I speak to senior leaders about disruption and how they define it and what they're going to do, I can tell you that all of them have a very similar response. But what's amazed me in my years of doing this is the response isn't really disruption that they're explaining back to me, it's destruction. Destruction is not the same as disruption, in case you didn't know. So you have to be able to look at this industry, like any other industry, and recognize that this isn't about destruction. What your industry is going through is disruption. And again, I try to be very visual and story-based, and I was trying to figure out how to sort of help you quantify what disruption is versus destruction. And I guess I get inspiration the same place we all do, like on our Facebook feeds. You go through it and you see like a really cute image with a quote. And literally one morning I came across this quote. Cynthia Celli, who's a fiction writer, she wrote, "For a seed to achieve its greatest expression, it must come completely undone. The shell cracks, its insides come out, and everything changes. To someone who doesn't understand growth, it would look like complete destruction." So if you can't understand what the opportunities are and how they change because of technology, that's where the struggle really, really lies for you. But you can't think about this big bad wolf called disruption and not realize that you can't just have a big bad wolf. You need to have also this other world. And this other world is, of course, your three little pigs. So what I'm going to do is walk you through what I think are the three little pigs that help industries, your businesses, maybe your band, whatever it is, move through this world of disruption, okay? So, pig number one, transformation. You cannot throw a music industry professional down a flight of stairs without the words business transformation tumbling out of their mouths. Look at the biggest players, smallest players, everyone's trying to figure out how to transform the business model. I would argue to you guys that transformation is what you do internally as an organization, a business, as a band. And what transformation to me looks like, at par, at sort of just a basic level, is are you using the same technology that your customers, your fans are using to connect to one another? It pains me to say this because I'm Canadian, but if your business is running on BlackBerry and Lotus Notes, you know what I'm trying to say? You can't be claiming to be transformative. So at par, transformation in terms of how you think about how do we become more digital, how do we get more savvy, is about you really using the same tools your customers, your fans are using day in and day out. It's how you work from inside out. Got that? Second little pig is innovation. Now this is where things get crazy. A lot of people think that marketing innovation is that they are now digital. I would argue that it's not the case. So suddenly you're using email to contact your fans, or as a business you move from direct mail and printing stuff out to email. That's not innovation. If you have moved from general advertising to Google AdWords, not innovation. Innovation is all of your ability as a businesses, as brands, to create digital products and services now for your customers. What does that look like? It means not just advertising, it means really connecting to them. How many of you have seen the thing, you go to Best Buy and you can get like those 5 camera setups for like $500, you can set them up in your studio or your house to creep on your wife or your kids, you know what I'm talking about? So when you buy those now, it used to come with like a hub, and you'd put the hub like camera 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it's all in the app. Buy the system, initiate it, pops up here. Hey Mitch, welcome to your security system. For $15 a month, we will record every single camera independently, High definition video, audio, everything stored in the cloud, no storage for you. Are you in? This thing pops up on anybody who buys these systems. It's like almost 100% conversion. 100% of people buy this thing. They love it. That is marketing innovation. Think about what happened there. Before, you'd set up the cameras, Best Buy. Buy to Best Buy. Problem, Best Buy, Best Buy, Best Buy, Best Buy. Now you, if you're the manufacturer of this camera system, you have a direct relationship with the customer. You have their information. You're connecting to them. You can cross-sell them. You can upsell them. They created a product or service that they could actually monetize. You don't have to monetize it, though. So all of you, as you create things and try to connect to your audience, everything the audience touches can be, in theory, a new type of business. It doesn't just have to be come to my show, check this out, download this, try this. It can be a new product or service. So that's your second little pig. Stay with me. The third little pig is transaction. So the transaction could be your Live Nation, someone buys a VIP package. Transaction could be your record mob, someone signs up for your stuff. Doesn't really matter. Those are the macro transactions. The amazing thing about the world that I occupy with the brands that we work with is there's new types of transactions that are extremely valuable that most businesses, brands, bands don't even think about. There are these micro transactions. So a couple of years ago, I was doing this event for Google. Rob talked about this. Basically what happens is they'll pull it together a room of like their 300 top advertisers by vertical. It could be automotive, it could be education, whatever. It just so happens New York City was education. So I'm speaking on the same day as this other guy's name is Avinash Kaushik. Avinash, if some of you know him, he's a big Google guy, big into analytics, big into digital. Great guy, really good friend of mine. You probably don't want him up on stage even though he's an amazing speaker. What I do is I typically come to events like this and I show you the outside world. This is what consumers are doing and you need to sort of put the pieces together about how you can change your business model. What he would have done is he would have spoken to Neil Dixon and said like, I want to know everybody's in my audience, and he would have spent like a month looking at all your websites, mobile applications. He'd come in here and publicly shame you about how bad they are. Literally, that's what he does. And he's so good at it that you're literally like sitting in the audience going, this is so embarrassing, but please more. Like, thank you, sir, may I have another? It's like he's just that good at it, right? And we were sharing our slides because we wanted to see if there's any crossover. Now, what he showed me was really profound, and it set me off on a whole other journey. He showed me the #1 advertiser on Google in the education segment. So we're talking about somebody that spends millions upon millions of dollars every single month with Google to sign up for not just a course, like you're buying, it's to literally register for the school. So this is like a big thing. You got to think about this if you're thinking about enrolling in a program. If somebody went to the site, watched this 4-minute video, and then signed up for the e-newsletter, there was an 85% plus chance that they would register for the course. How much of these millions upon millions of dollars do you think this education facility was driving towards the video or the e-newsletter? I'm telling you the story, it's because it was zero. They didn't even know. Your business has these microtransactions. So what you're doing is you're looking at things like likes on Facebooks or video views as some sort of what we would call vanity metric. Look how many likes I have. Look how many views I have. It's the wrong metric. These are all microtransactions. Whether you are a band trying to get a fan, whether you are in business in the music industry, a record label, a touring company, it doesn't matter. What you can do now is understand that every single microtransaction has value, right? Somebody likes your page on Facebook, watches a video, signs up for your newsletter, on and on and on. And the question that I would ask you, that I want you to ask yourself and your partners, is simply this. What are the shortest course of microtransactions that gets us to the macro transaction? Could be a download for the song. I mean, it could be anything. But the truth is, when I say these things, a lot of people go, shit, don't know. Most people have no clue. And it's not just you, it's not just smaller business, it's every type of business has very little clue about not only what the microtransactions are, but how to actually figure out how to work them and optimize them to make people more inclined. Like if you knew if somebody watched your video and signed up for your e-newsletter, there was like an 80% chance they'd buy a ticket to your show, wouldn't you drive a lot more attention? Wouldn't you spend a lot more time maybe doing more videos or trying to figure out which videos work, which ones don't, and on and on and on. Now, if I stopped right here and said like, good night, God bless, thank you all for having me, I think I still provided value. Because if you think about what's happening in disruption, you think about the music industry, and you think about those 3 little pigs, it's a new way for you to think going forward about whether you're trying to get a new fan or trying to grow your business. One is this idea of transformation. Are we actually using the tools and connecting the same way our customers connect in the sort of real world? 2 is, are we innovating? Meaning, what do our customers now see? I call them customers, it's just the way I talk now. Back when I was in the industry, I'd be like fans, but it's just, I'm sort of bouncing back and forth. The third one is transactions, what they do. How do we act internally? What do our customers see? What do they actually do? You have a new way to think about any initiative you're trying to put out, whether it's a tour or a new tour package. It doesn't really matter, okay? And so if you think about that, what happens is, and I talk a lot about this to bigger businesses and smaller businesses, they're like, oh my God, it's paralyzing. Like, this sounds like 18 months of an IT roadmap. I don't have the resources or the technological skills to do this. And what I would say to you is, it's not so much that. It can't be 5 minutes because I just got up on stage, but thank you for pointing that out. It's got to be at least 40 more minutes, but thank you. Timing it too, he doesn't know, it's fine. It's not these big changes. It's actually these little changes. And what I mean by little changes is, and you'll see this, is your customers, your fans, have adopted and changed to technology in a very fluid and organic way, unlike we've ever seen before. And that's the real focus here. So don't think about this sort of big, overbearing, how do I deal with this? Think about these little changes and how your customers or fans are moving through this. So case in point would be this. How many of you know what brand this is for? Raise your hands if you know what this is. I love the job that I do. In fact, I had a really massive flashback today. I walked into the Sheraton Center, and I saw there was like going upstairs for the Conference Board of Canada. Do you see that sign? And downstairs for CMW. And I was like, oh my God, I'm having a flashback, because I actually was in Toronto several months ago speaking to the Conference Board of Canada. It was a similar sized room, but very different. Very different meaning a lot older. The men were like really suits, like I was looking not like that. And the women were like Hillary Clinton, like pantsuit type, like very formal, you know? And I asked them, how many of you know what this is? And I would say maybe a third of them knew what this was. Sort of like, yeah, I think my kid's on that. And I got on a plane, I flew home back to where I live in Montreal, because I was doing an event where I was speaking for the McGill MBA school in their strategy department. And I showed the students this, and of course, they looked at me like I was their grandfather. You know what I mean? So it's like one of those things where I had this weird paradox, where in one room I'm seeing this like, oh, look at this guy. He's like tall, bald, dressed in black. He must be from the future. And then in another room, I'm like the grandparent. And like, it's crazy. I go to my office here on Spadina in front, and I literally walk in and people look at my own employees like I'm the old guy. So Snapchat. Snapchat is basically a platform, you know, right? It enables me and you to be connected. And that if I send you an image or a video, once you see it, it disappears forever. Unless you're like the NSA or Edward Snowden, apparently. But let's just go with that story, right? We all know Snapchat because of its growth in popularity, but we're talking about these small little nuanced changes. And when I think about Snapchat, I go a little bit back in time to 2012, 2013. And I remember this day very well because I popped open the Wall Street Journal on my tablet, my iPad, and I was having my morning coffee, and I suddenly had that sensation that where my left side of my body went numb, had the sensation of burnt toast, like I thought I was stroking out when I saw this news. Could not believe 2013, Evan Spiegel and his co-founder had Snapchat. It was 8 employees. There was no video at the time, remember. When Snapchat started, there was no stories. It was just, I send you an image, it disappears, and that's it. Facebook approached them for $3 billion, and they were like, no. And I remember why I had this sort of sensation that I was stroking out. I couldn't believe it. It's because my niece is about the same age as Evan. And I imagine that my niece was the co-founder of Snapchat. And it's like, you know, Saturday night, you're hanging out, and you're like, hey, how's your little application Snapchat going with you and your 8 friends? How's it working out? She's like, you're not going to believe this. Facebook called, and they want to acquire us. You'd be like, put the cutlery down. It's happy dance time. This is the great, yeah, we said no to them. You said no to Facebook? Like, was it like a question of money? No, they offered us $3 billion. I have 3 young kids. I'm pretty familiar with the child abuse laws in Canada, but like, there will be blood, right? You know what I mean? Like, you freak out. You couldn't handle it. And it was a sort of unfeasible thing to understand. But if you actually think about what was going on here at this moment in time, things were a little bit different. If you were to grab me right now and slam me up against the wall and say, well, it works in social media, we're struggling, I'd say, look, the beautiful thing about social media and digital is that you can chart your own path. You can decide to use Facebook to distribute music. You can decide to use Facebook to promote promotions. You can decide to use Facebook to do customer support. And as long as you're building KPIs, that's what makes digital the best. This isn't like Thursday night, 8 p.m. TV, where if I buy the spot and you don't, I get the exposure to the audience. You don't, my sales increase, yours don't. Each channel has its own world. But if you forced me and said, okay, bullshit, what really works? I'd say 3 things really work right now. One is it has to be image-based. Would you agree with that? Most of the content that we see that's getting real action is image-based, meaning video or picture, right? The next thing I would say is it has to be what I would call mobile first. I mean, the experience on the mobile device is better than the experience on your desktop or on your laptop or on a computer. If you think about what's really happening now, whether it's an Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, blah, 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 it's a mobile first experience, okay? The third component is it has to have social built into it. Now again, I'm sort of known, and thank you, Rob, for the intro, being a social media guy, but when I define social, it sort of makes people really sort of like let down. So I'll define it for you because I don't care. When I define social, all I say is whatever you create and put out into the world has the hooks built into it that makes it as easy as possible for someone to share and talk about it. That's it. That's what social really is. So would you agree with that model, that if we were to sort of say what really works in terms of promotions right now, it would be image-based, mobile-first, social? Does that make sense to you? Do you have like sort of a semi-agreement on that? So if you go back in time, at this exact moment when Facebook and Snapchat had this moment, you can actually see what was going on in the world. Don't worry, you don't have to read this, I'll point it out to you. But at this moment, you have to remember, there was no video. Snapchat didn't have video, Facebook didn't have video, nothing was going on there. But in terms of photo sharing and the mobile web and the social web, we had 43% of the entire market was owned by Facebook, which is the blue. You had 7% of the market currently at that point, which was owned by Instagram. Who owns Instagram? Right, Facebook owns Instagram. So you got 50% of the market is primarily owned by Facebook. And you remember Flickr? What happened to Flickr? Poor little 1% in purple. People used to come to me and say, I've got this great idea for photo app. And I was like, are you crazy? Flickr, like how are you going to compete with them? Disruption, right? 49% of the market at this point, 2013 November, was Snapchat. Not so funny anymore. Facebook knew for $3 billion they could own 100% of the market that we all just admitted in 2017 is the market. So imagine what that would have done. We talk about the duopoly of digital in terms of being a Facebook and Google world. Think about 100% dominance at this moment in time. It's pretty crazy. If you actually push this forward and look at what is literally today, sorry for the app till, it should say April, but I literally just did this morning. You're looking at the daily video views by the billions. So look at where Snapchat is at 10 billion daily views, Facebook is at 18 billion views. Look at YouTube. It used to be, not even a year and a half ago, where that sort of combined force, had Facebook and Snapchat done that acquisition, they were on target to almost match YouTube. And look at how far along it's come. If you added those two together, you're talking, what, close to 19 million views, give or take a couple million, compared to only YouTube's 4 million views. And so you can look at that and go, well, did Snapchat make a mistake? Or did they have a vision for themselves being the future of digital? I think they're idiots. I would have taken the $3 billion and figured something else out personally, but again, I'm not Evan Spiegel, and Evan Spiegel is having what I would call his Talladega Nights moment. He's got a smoking hot model wife and like his multi-million-dollar mansion. He's got an $800 million bonus just for taking the company public. Forget where it's at, up or down in the market today, and what that means going forward. But again, the idea here isn't necessarily about Snapchat and how important it may or may not be to you, what you do. It's about these small little nuanced changes, and that's the lesson here. What Snapchat did so brilliantly, that's affecting all of us today and will affect you tomorrow, is it introduced a new form of communication. So I write regularly now on my blog, and it's published in other places, called 6 Pixels of Separation. In 2012, I wrote this article called The Impermanent Internet. 2012, Snapchat started getting a bit of ground. And what I found fascinating is that Snapchat is the first digital platform, social, that actually replicates the way in which most of us communicate every single day. I was standing in the hallway, like waiting for the session to open and watching you guys. Not everything went on Snapchat or Twitter or Facebook or Tumblr or your MySpace page or wherever it's going, right? It's not the case. Most of the conversations we have are ephemeral. They sort of come and go and they disappear. And Snapchat literally replicated that into the digital world. Now, this is really important because people like me would sit down with businesses like yourselves and tell you you need to have a website and you need to be on social. Why? Because the internet is like an elephant, and Google is like an elephant, and Twitter is like an elephant. It never forgets. And if someone's doing a search for you on Google, that first page of search results is your brand experience, right? Positive, negative, or neutral. This band sucks. This band's great. This band's okay. And that's what it is. And on social, if someone says, hey, what do you think of this band? Or what do you think of this company? Or what do you think of this customer service? That feedback that you see organically in the ecosystem is there. And if you as a business aren't there, this has been the narrative for 20 years, you're losing out, right? And suddenly Snapchat comes along and introduces an entirely new way to communicate, one that isn't permanently there, one that comes and goes, one that's very social and yet extremely personable, right? Unless you're doing stories on Snapchat, you're really just publishing to one person, back and forth, almost like messaging. And what you start seeing is that the world really changes. So what we're seeing is Instagram and Facebook, which have been basically stealing all the cool features from Snapchat, has now made it, because of their platform, almost 2 billion people connected on Facebook, more popular than actual Snapchat. They're taking this idea of these ephemeral sort of fast communications and bringing it into all the other platforms right the same as Snapchat. So it's not just isolated on Snapchat. In fact, if you go and look at a lot of these social platforms, I'm sure if you're experimenting them, when you sort of feel this, right? It's like, I don't even know where to go anymore because they all feel the exact same almost. They're all integrating the same type of thinking. So they're introducing this sort of type of communication, this type of messaging platform. And what it's doing is it's forcing bigger companies like MGM and Vice, to actually think, how do we create content in a world that disappears? Think about what a video costs to produce. And in this room, people know a lot better than other industries. Now imagine if I said to you, every video you produce, the second your customer sees it, it's gone forever, they'll never see it again, you can't put it on YouTube, you can't. You'd be like, that's really expensive and painful. And so these big companies, again, MGM and Vice, are trying to figure out, how do we actually communicate with people in this more ephemeral sort of once they see it, it's gone type of world? Then you take it a step further and you think, well, what is Snapchat really like? So if you look at what social media did, and then you have Snapchat come in and sort of nip, then right outside of it is messaging applications. And messaging applications are now being driven by these things called chatbots. Have you heard of chatbots? Basically enables you to go in and build almost like an artificial intelligence thing that can respond to your needs. So imagine like Uber in your messaging application where you can say, I'm here at the Sheridan Center, I need a car, and it comes, and the system is all automated. It looks like you're speaking to a real person, but it's actually a chatbot that's handling the conversation. Take this further, and we're seeing this in more mature markets, in places like Asia where messaging applications have been around longer. This is happening now. They're doing literal payments within these messaging applications. So people aren't then going from Facebook because they saw how great you are to your page, to buy a ticket, to download your song, to buy a concert ticket. They're taking care of the full transaction, not behind your firewall, but out in public in these social places. So the first thing I want you to think about in these slight nuanced changes that all of us have made as consumers is that we've embraced this idea of what I would call the impermanent internet. This thing where as businesses, brands, bands, you can connect to people in that sort of one-to-one way and it disappears once the content is viewed once and it's gone forever. Tremendous opportunity if you think about what you can do with it. The second little thing we're seeing, which I think has tremendous impact on your business, is ownership. Customers, all of us, are starting to question, what do we really need to own anymore? How many of you still have one of these? Maybe a bad room to ask this in, right? It's like, we're the ones, by the way, this industry, you're the last ones holding on. Right? Most people had this proudly displayed in their den, whether it was their CDs or DVDs, and then it moved very recently down into the basement. And then it moved from the basement into boxes, and then it moved from boxes onto the front lawn with a sign saying, free, please take me. Think about how fast that transaction happened, and why. So in a non-music example, you could look at things like this, right? Now you've heard in the session before me all about streaming. Streaming is a huge thing for the music industry. I'd argue it is, but there's something else that happened here that's more important than streaming versus downloads. And what's more important here is there's been a nuanced change of acceptance by consumers and how they behave in terms of what they're looking to buy and what they're willing to do. So if you think about it, Netflix just announced yesterday they're on the cusp of 100 million subscribers, Netflix. This is a platform that has about 10 billion hours being streamed there every month. Here's the big idea, though, no more hard drives. See, before, you had your laptop and you downloaded things, music and film. In this room, I'm assuming legally, I'm hoping. In most rooms, when I say that, they all laugh. I go, you downloaded it legally, right? It's like, bah, ha, 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 ha. Very funny. They don't realize it was the music industry, like it's bad. So you fill up your hard drive. Then you take your USB sticks, and you start dumping your stuff on USB sticks, and then you get like one of those little Western digital hard drives, and you put all your music and MP3s onto that, and you're like, screw it, I have this old computer in my house, I use that as my media hub, and well, Wi-Fi, right? And then suddenly, boom, streaming comes along and no more. Data, the construct of data and how much space it takes up in your hard drives, all that stuff, you're like, I'm done with it. This is the big idea. This isn't about streaming. The opportunity for all of you, for all businesses, not just you, is that your consumers, all of us, have become very habituated to paying a small monthly fee for access over ownership. That's it. Is that true? How many of you have a Spotify account? Apple Music, keep your hands raised. Netflix, right? It's a fact, isn't it? That we are paying monthly, very comfortably, all of a sudden for access to the entire library over ownership. And if you think about that, you could go, well, that's a little nuanced change. It could be, but it has huge implications. Like, how many of you honestly remember Friday night, you're hanging out with some friends, put on your winter jackets because we live in Canada, get in our car, drive to the Videotron in Quebec or Rogers store here in Blockbuster. Honestly, how many times would you leave with nothing There was never any of those friggin' yellow or red tags left by the time I got there, right? And you go home after all that effort with nothing. Last night, I was in my hotel room staring at the Netflix page, literally saying to myself, I don't know what to watch, there's so much good shit here, right? You do that every night. Analysis paralysis. You go down the rabbit hole of YouTube, of Spotify, of Apple Music. We do it all the time. Don't look at it as streaming. Look at it as how consumers now think about buying and being a part of a brand. What they're saying is, I'm willing to pay a small monthly fee to have access to a bigger library than ownership. It's of more value to me. And what's amazing is if you look at it in the music industry world, I don't know how many people have seen this piece of data because it came out only a week or so ago, it's pretty staggering. If you look what's happening in streaming, it's up. Vinyl album sales, we know there's a sort of collectible cachet going on there. Video streams up too. This is where things are insane to me. Because people on this stage have literally said, well, you know, piracy is a huge problem, and like people wanting to download one song versus an album with 12 tracks and nothing's on. It turns out that wasn't actually true. Like, look at the numbers. CD sales are down, but not as bad as digital album sales or digital track sales. People actually, it's not true. What people wanted was this. They wanted access to the full library. They didn't want download. They didn't want the physical goods anymore. They don't need them. It changed total behavior. Last week, I believe it was on Thursday, this came out where basically what we have in the US is a world where as many people who have subscriptions to cable, it's the same amount of people who have subscriptions to Netflix. Last week, paying for access to a greater library. And what are the implications? They're huge. So now what we see from that is this fallout where more people have access to Netflix than a DVR. This is like a real interesting consumer behavior mindset. What people are saying is, you know, used to like PVR scandal. You know, I'm gonna watch it and binge watch it on my own. Now you're like, screw it, I'm not gonna do that. When it's on Netflix, I'll watch it. They're literally changing their own habits. Do you see yourself in this at all when you think about it? So these are moments that you can optimize and build against. So you have this sort of impermanent internet, you have this ability to think about how you sell things in terms of what people want to own, and then you have this other new world that's taking hold, this shareable moment. What can we share? If I have something and I'm not using it, can I rent it to you? Can I sell it to you if I don't want to do that? And of course, we have the sort of grand example of that being Airbnb. How many of you used Airbnb? Okay, so when was the first time you used Airbnb? A couple years ago. Okay, so let's say now it's not a couple years ago, it's 3 years ago, and you and I are buddies, and we're hanging out at a cafe, and you're super excited because you're about to put some down payment on a new condo that you're super excited about. Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the local real estate market and condos here in Toronto. It's insane. Montreal is not like that, but it's insane. We also know that basically budgets, not in Toronto, are always in a place where the house you really want is just out of your budget. You know what I mean in real estate? It's always like that. So imagine I said, well, that condo that you really want, not this one, we can get now, because what we're going to do is we're going to take one of those rooms and we're going to put it on Airbnb, where we're going to have random strangers showing up to your house, maybe every single day, to sleep with you in your home. Cool? Yeah, and it's like all of us are like, of course it's cool, but think about that. Like, most people's reaction to that is, no, I don't want to do that because I'm not a sociopath. That sounds like you're, right? It's like, it's crazy to think that, like, you know, we had real simple family rules, like never talk to strangers and be careful about the internet because a stranger could lure you. Now we literally use the internet to lure strange cars to us to get into, right? It's called Uber. It's actually a huge business, right? So you have to be able to sort of understand that these sort of nuanced changes are pretty dramatic. So you look at Airbnb, 190 plus countries, 100 plus million guests, 640,000 hosts. But what it did was it opened up new business models and opportunities. So I have a close buddy of mine, his name is Julian Smith, he lives in Montreal. And several years back, Julian came to me and was like, Mitch, I have a business idea. I'd like you to invest, and I want you to sit on the board of directors. Are you interested? And I'm like, Julian, bring it on. I love that stuff. What do you got? So here's what I want to do. I want to go to major metropolitan cities, densely populated, Montreal, Chicago, Toronto. And what I want to do is find big office buildings that have an extra couple hundred square feet. Now that happens a lot. You have big companies renting and leasing, but long-term leases in buildings. They come in and say, I need X amount of thousands of square feet, and usually there's a couple hundred left over. They'll turn it into a server room, they'll turn it into like a maintenance room, who knows what. It's like, I want to convert them into these beautiful like workspaces, and I want to rent them by the hour to people. Are you in? And I'm like, Julian, I have 3 young kids. There is no chance I'm investing in this business. I can think of 2 things that are going to happen in these rooms that you want to rent by the hour in major downtown cities. And what are you know, like tons of drug deals are going to happen there. And a lot of porno being filmed in these rooms, right? Like, it was so obvious to me. who in their right mind would allow a commercial real estate developer to have a random, think about insurance, think about security, having strangers coming in and out by the hour? Are you crazy? Turns out I'm an idiot. Should have invested hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in valuations. Breather Space is opening basically every week and month. Toronto, Montreal, Boston, all over the place. Julian invented the fourth place to work. Right? You have home, you have your office, you've got Starbucks, Howard Schultz's favorite place, and now you have the fourth place, Breather Spaces. It's not who you think. Actors rent breather spaces to run their lines when they're in different cities. Huge businesses actually use breather spaces because it's for overflow, like there's no conference room available, take a breather space. I actually used a breather space 3 years ago. My business got acquired. We didn't want our team to see accountants and lawyers coming in, so we did them in breather spaces, and on and on and on. Created this entirely new way to think, right? How can I leverage a thing where I have it and I don't need it at a certain time? Have any of you ever tried parking in London, England? It's like, whoever laughs has really been to London. It's like, you don't even drive in London. It's like saying, I've tried to park downtown Toronto. It's insane. And so these people in London launched this thing called Just Park, where what you do is you go in and you register your driveway or your garage or carport, and you can rent it out to people by the day, by the hour, by the month, however you want. Pretty smart. Not using it. My wife is off to work. Why not make a couple $100 a day, a month, whatever it might be? And it scales, and now in Toronto we have Rover, which is basically doing the same thing. And businesses that are doing it well are doing like $3,000 a year. You might think, I don't know, $3,000 a year in your pocket just for like letting someone park in your driveway. It seems pretty cool, right? So again, it sort of shifts down to this interesting place where this becomes accessible to everybody. It's not a big business where you have to think about how can I leverage this technology to do this. Consumers, you and I have become very, very good in a very short period of time at this ability to understand this impermanent internet, Snapchat adoption, stories adoption. We've become exceptionally good at this ability of like, what do I need to own? I'd rather pay for access over ownership. Think about your music, your movies, and on and on. And we've become exceptionally good at this idea of sharing. Look at the scale of Airbnb, of Breather, and on and on and on. Where it leads us to is a place that I call the age of efficiency. Right, the age of efficiency simply means this, like, what do you really want right now? Do you want a car? We'll call it Uber, right? You want flowers? You want a lift? Who wants to get laid? It's Tinder. I'm married. My wife doesn't let me date, but I'm told on Tinder, how this works is, how many of you have used Tinder? Don't be shy, raise the hands up. There's like a whole Canadian Music Week Tinder. So, swipe left, I don't like your face. Swipe right, I think you're hot. If the other person swipes right also, let's get it on. And it is, it's not even dating, it literally is like hooking up. That's really what it was created for. And the reason I talk about Tinder, and it's not just to get a couple laughs, the point is that think about your mobile website right now. Think about whatever it is, your business, your band. Think about the fact that somebody can swipe right and get laid easier than they can find out how to contact you on your mobile website right now. That's my point. Is people say to me all the time, like, oh, mobile thing is really expensive, I'm not sure. We become habituated. Think about Uber, right? You hit the button, the car shows up. Now I gotta go into your website, I gotta like pinch it open, my fat fingers hit the wrong button, I can't do this, I can't do that. You're telling me I gotta go to your website, ugh. I was in mobile content before there was a mobile web browser. Literally, I was in mobile content when you couldn't send text to somebody who wasn't on the same carrier as you in Canada. Remember that? You could only send TELUS to TELUS or Rogers to Rogers. That's how long ago I was in mobile content. And I can tell you that when you think about where we're at today, I'm extremely frustrated. Because what's the year of mobile? This is the year of business mobile. Meaning the businesses, your brands, your bands that don't make mobile first experience are the ones that are going to lose tremendous market share starting literally right now. Because everybody else, all of us, are actually very habituated to Snapchat, Twitter, Uber, Tinder, and on and on and on. And so my real business and my real role has been how do I help businesses and bands and whoever figure out from a business perspective how to embrace this world. And I came across some really interesting examples that I want to share with you. One is, it comes from Kuwait of all places. So in Kuwait, it's a very similar entrepreneurial ecosystem that we have here in Toronto or Montreal. Small businesses want to get online, it's friggin' expensive, it's hard to do. And so one small business owner was like, screw it, I'm gonna do e-commerce on Instagram. I go, what? It's like, yeah, Instagram, 500 million people are on the platform. It's connected into Facebook. You can do really beautiful merchandise. You can have casual shots or formal shots. You can decide any way you do it. Okay, but you want to do e-commerce, like how do you sell? Well, if people want to buy something, we'll just set up a little WhatsApp account right here. WhatsApp is a messenger application like we just talked about. It was actually acquired by Facebook for $25 billion not that long ago. And that's free, so if somebody comes in like, hey, I'm interested in that headscarf, how do I get it? Well, just here's our Square or our PayPal and just send it there. Square, PayPal, free. You pay a percentage of the transaction. Instagram account, free. WhatsApp account, free. No need for e-commerce infrastructure, no need for fulfillment, no need for blah, 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 blah. They've embraced this idea of the impermanent internet. This did so well that they wound up doing an event, not unlike Canadian Music Week, or digital media, whatever they're calling it, where they literally had a bunch of keynote speakers come up on stage and talk about how they built their Instagram businesses. These businesses were generating between $2 and $25 million a year just on Instagram. It's crazy, right? And so I watch how this trend unfolds, and sure enough, in the New York Times, you start seeing this thing where a thriving bazaar is tapping a big market on Instagram. Instagram doesn't know it's an e-commerce platform at all. They have no idea. And in fact, literally last week, I started seeing this pop up again and again, where you're seeing young entrepreneurs are literally using Instagram to bring e-commerce to regions that just don't have it. It's tremendously powerful when you think about it. You're probably thinking about Instagram, we'll share videos and images. You can sell on Instagram. It's called Insta Business. It's literally a thing. Not one that I made up, it's a thing in the world. And if you want to scale this from the small business owner of the Gaza Strip or a small business owner in Kuwait, let's go to massive, big, evil corp. They're not evil, but let's just, Mondelez, huge corporation, right? Mondelez owns Oreo, and I've been blown away by how Oreo has embraced these little sort of nuanced pillars of how consumers interact with technology. If you actually take a look at their Facebook page, which was this morning, you'd notice over here that it's got 42.7 million likes. Holy hell, how many of you are on Facebook and have liked the Oreo page? 42.7 million. I'm not one for vanity metrics, but that's pretty staggering. That's not at all what's impressive. What's impressive is what they did over here. 2 holiday seasons ago, and they repeated it this year because it did so well, they launched this thing called Color-Filled. Raise your hand if you heard of Color-Filled. Nobody. Makes the story better. One person in the back. Hang with me. You go out to this very simple website, you decide the pattern that you want, and you can color in the package. And once you're done, it will actually create the package of cookies and mail it as a gift for the holiday season to whoever you want to send it to for $15. So you can customize and create your own Oreo package filled with yummy Oreo cookies and send it to somebody for $15. That's the business model. I was imagining I'm the chief marketing officer and you come to me with this idea, I might fire you. Be like, we're Mondelez or something, Walmart and Shoppers, what are you doing? Customize Oreo. This is crazy, right? It did so well, it completely sold. They couldn't even keep up with demand in the first year. Second year, equally crazy, insane popularity. But here's what makes this very interesting to the model that I'm trying to have you guys understand. It wasn't just Facebook. They actually built this site on Shopify. Go Canada, right? Shopify, $5.5 billion public company that was started by my buddy Harley and his business partner Toby. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to basically democratize e-commerce. They wanted to give you all the ability to sell your yarn bracelets or your single CDs. Jay-Z has sold his new CD on it in a very simple way. You don't actually have any technological infrastructure. You don't need much skill. For a couple bucks a month, they give you as much technology as the biggest brands in the world have to sell. Oh, that's interesting. A couple dollars a month. You mean you're paying for access over owning all this software and infrastructure? That sounds like something we just talked about, didn't it? And if it didn't work, all they had to do is go into the system administrator, knock it down, hit X. And you know why you didn't hear about it? Because all they did was they marketed it to their 42.5 million fans. So they didn't have to go out beyond their own ecosystem. And if it didn't work, they could have gone onto Facebook and hit the X and dumped them out. It didn't matter, right? This did so well that Mondelez, which is a massive consumer packaged goods company that owns Oreo, came out and said, listen, by 2020, we want to increase our e-commerce sales tenfold. And you know what happened when I read this article? I said the magic words, bullshit. Because as I told you earlier, I started off in journalism, and if I were rewriting this headline, which I would say how Mondelez plans to increase its direct-to-customer sales tenfold by 2020, because that's what they're doing. And if this wasn't Canadian Music Week and you all were employees of Walmart, or you all were employees of Shoppers Drug Mart or Loblaws, you should be terrified by this. That they're saying we don't need you anymore, we're going to start selling directly to the customer. And by the way, last week, Amazon held an event for these massive brands to tell them, stop selling through the massive retailers. We don't want you to do that. We want you to sell direct and do things in a more direct way. Now, what's amazing about this is you may have heard of Dollar Shave Club. You've heard of Dollar Shave Club? How many of you have heard of it? You've seen the video, it went sort of viral. Did you know this, that it got bought in July of last year for $1 billion by Unilever? Did you hear that news? We hear the viral video news, sometimes we don't hear the outcome of it. What did Unilever buy? Unilever is a company that understands CPG better than all of us. They know how to build and do this stuff. They get it. They actually didn't buy razor blades that you could buy. They bought a mentality. Dollar Shave Club had a very unique model. They said, guys like Mitch, middle-aged white guys, too lazy to go to the pharmacy, forget the stuff all the time. We're going to send you your razor blades and your shaving cream every month for a reasonable fee, less than what you would pay for a Gillette sensor product. Are you in? And obviously it scaled and worked to the point that they were able to sell this company for $1 billion. But think about what it really is. They're not selling razor blades. They're not selling razors. They sold the database. They sold Unilever's ability to now speak to hundreds of thousands of people just like me, which typically Unilever's speaking to mom, soccer mom, that segment, right? And so if you think about that, the opportunities compound. They got it. What they did recently, Dollar Shave Club, is they launched their own private label called Wanderer. So now it's not just razor blades and shaving cream, but now you can get like loofah pads and soap and daily face cleaners and on and on. How long do you think it's going to be before they start saying, hey, Mr. Mitch, are there other products within the Unilever family that might be? How long will it be before they say, hey, Mitch, why don't you bring your wife into this ecosystem? And we can set her up with the stuff she might require from the Unilever family. It's going well. It's going so well, and I love these headlines in Business Insider. Consumers are leaving Gillette in droves, bleeding. Get it, shaving, bleeding, ha, ha, ha. But if you look and see what it is, they're talking about things like Harry's and Dollar Shave Club. They've switched the model. These models that we're talking about have changed how consumers interact and think about what they're doing. Gee, doesn't this sound like Netflix? Monthly fee, small monthly fee, access to a whole. These are just the business models that keep coming up to haunt us. So where does this leave brands? Where does this leave brands and bands? I think Jeff Bezos said it best. In the old world, you devoted 30% of your time to building a great service and 70% of your time to shouting about it. And in the new world, it totally inverts. Right? What he's saying is people want the experience. We've been hearing this time and time again. Retail's dying, you got to create a better experience. People don't want to come to clubs anymore, so what are they saying? Start shows earlier. Like, you've seen all this information, right? They're trying to create a better, more consistent experience for people. And if you think about how that moves, it's really happening because of this mobile device, right? How many of you have cut the cord, like you don't have a physical phone line in your home? Raise your hand. Yeah, I can't believe that I still have one. Like every month I look at the bill, I'm like, well, I don't even have a phone, I just realized the other day, I don't have a phone plugged into a wall. I have one phone wrapped up in like the bottom of my night table in case of the zombie apocalypse, I guess, that I'll plug in and someone will be there. Like, it's insane, right? And we're seeing this, and I don't say this for laughs. I say this because we tend to think that mobile still, as a business lever, is something that happens outside of the home or outside of work, and it's not. We've seen that shift very, very quickly, where mobile is ubiquitous. It's not sort of letting me be free from the destination of going to a computer. And it leads us to this massive inflection point that I think is so profound for you all, which is technology has removed technology from technology. I'll repeat that because it's hot in here and it's late. Technology has removed technology from technology, right? So who has a smartphone there? You have a where do you keep the instruction manual for your iPhone? You. Yeah. Yeah, he's like laughing at me. Of course you don't have one. There is no instruction manual for these devices. You hit the button and it goes. My mother turned 75 and we decided to buy her an iPad. I'm like, Mom, if you can't figure this out, we're gonna have to put you down, right? But you've seen on YouTube cats who know how to open up iPhones and find the pictures they like. They're like, just a cat can do it. It's true. We tend to think that it's so complex, it's so hard, but what has happened is screens are everywhere, they're ubiquitous, and they're connected. And that what's making this move at the pace it's moving in that is that the technology has removed the technology from it. It's not like commands and entering software and how do you log on and I can't. Like, just think about your experience with technology. It's completely changed, and it's changed so much that it's changed who you are at work. It used to be that your desktop, your computer was your primary form of work, and that you used your mobile phone, I'll just check something quickly. It's completely inverted, where now mobile is the primary way we handle our business, and desktop has been relegated to like the accessory device for mobile. Do you feel that in the work that you do? I mean, it used to be I do events like this, you'd be handing out screens everywhere. It's not that anymore. It's mostly mobile devices. So we see this. Just to give you some sort of clarity, this year 75% of the internet is going to be mobile, just so you're clear on where it's going. The other thing that you need to worry about or think about, especially in the music world, is this voice thing. Voice is quickly becoming the new way we navigate technology, meaning we're going to stop clicking, stop touching, stop scrolling. We're going to be saying things. Think about things like Amazon Echo. Think about things like Siri. I got to say it gently because otherwise my phone will pop. Cortana, right? So we're starting to see this now more, where people are saying, hey, play me the latest single from Our Lady Peace. Play me the latest whatever it might be. And there's no more search. So it's not like you're ranking off of search anymore. You're going to have to understand that we're moving to a place where voice becomes the navigation. And what we're seeing is it's starting to tick along, where my buddy Chuck Martin, who really watches this, what they call the Internet of Things, is seeing that people are now buying at a higher pace and more just by their voice. I need some garbage bags at Amazon, and it's coming. Again, in Canada, we don't have Alexa yet, but it is coming, and it will be here. So now think about not just optimizing for search and screens, but for voice. When people aren't going to have a screen in front of them to have options, it's going to just return the result that they might want or may not want. It's not these massive things. It's little nuanced changes that we all make as customers that have created these huge, big changes for us. I'll leave you with a couple final thoughts for you to sort of tinker with for your own business. One is, what I'd like you to do is, if you're trying to launch a show, launch a program, launch a new part of your business, don't think about just doing an advertising campaign. Think about, is there something I can provide to my customer or potential customer that is a new product or service that they would use, that they would access, that has value? Anybody can advertise, we can all advertise. It takes, I think, a bigger, different type of thinking to engage with them with tools, things that might make them more connected to you. It doesn't have to generate revenue. I think it's great if it does, but it could be free that you just put out to the world. The next thing I tell you is think environment over which screen. So I'm happy to be here because a lot of people are talking about augmented reality and virtual reality. We're coming off of day 2 of F8, the big Facebook developer conference. It's happening right now in San Francisco. And yesterday, the real announcement was, get ready. Mark Zuckerberg is trying to kill your phone. He wants it to happen here in this augmented or mixed reality spaces. And I realize when I say this, the whole audience goes like, oh, now we're into virtual reality? I had this guy, Kevin Kelly, on my podcast. He's an amazing futurist. He's one of the founders of Wired magazine. He wrote a great book called The Inevitable. And we were talking about his book, and he said, well, what do you speak about, like, out in the world now? I said, actually, I do a full hour on this augmented virtual reality for brands. What do businesses need to know? And he's like, how's it going? And I said, sort of like this. Like, you get the sort of cricket stares and like, oh, you just lost me. And he's like, let me tell you something about technology. And I think it's really relevant to everything we've talked about in the past little bit. He said, technology happens very, very slowly, and then all at once. And he's totally right. I was in this music industry in 1988, and I can tell you as I watched it, and some of my friends are in the room from back then, they know, I was banging on their doors for websites and doing this stuff, and oh, you're crazy. Nothing could break the strong walls of the music industry. It happened very, very slowly, and then all at once. And it's going to happen again and again and again because that's what technology does. So think about not just the screen. Is it a mobile? Is it a desktop? Is it a laptop? Think about the environment. How many of you watch YouTube on the GO train? It's not the same as when you're sitting in bed looking at it on a screen, is it? How many of you know which one of your consumers use it, where, and how they do about it? So that's one thing. The other thing I would tell you is don't worry so much about what's next. Think about what's now. So the other opportunities, there's a lot of things that are available to you all right now that are amazing. One quick thing, Google Optimizer. How many of you used Google Optimizer or touched it or heard of it even? So right now, it's free. You can do split A/B testing for free. This software used to be hundreds and hundreds of dollars. You can literally send to your email list 50 versions of one, 50 versions of the other, see which one works, and send it to the rest. All of this stuff is now literally available free. You don't have to install anything. It's all done. The last thing I would tell you is we do live in what I would call as an advertising guy, an impression-based world. I mean, you have to pay for access. You have all these likes on Facebook. You want to promote or send a link, you have to pay for it. Unfortunately, it's the way it works. But I would still say that the opportunity, in particular in this industry, music industry, the creative industry, is that don't just think about buying impressions. Think about the experience you're all having. Think about the experience your fans are having, your customers are having, and think about how you can make an impression on them. Because now you can with the 3 little pigs and how they connect. And if you do this, you'll be what I call meme awesome, if you know what I mean. So they're turning the rooms really quick here, and I don't know if there's time for Q&A. I don't think there is there? Okay, listen, sometimes people are shy, they're not sure. I respond to every single tweet, email, everything. So before we go to Q&A, let me just leave you all my contact information. If you're too shy or you want to connect with me, this is all my contact information. You just go there, type in Mitch Joel, you'll see, I'm just kidding. Here's all my contact information. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. Hope you have a great day. Thank you.